everyone. The month of March is Autism Awareness Month. So we've partnered up with an organization called Raising the Ladder in order to bring you a series of interviews to raise awareness on the condition. We hope you enjoyed this series. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Today we're here with the lovely Miss Iman Doba. Welcome, Iman. We're so happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure for me to be here.
Iman is a speech therapist by profession, and she's part of Raising the Ladder. So Iman, can you please tell me, how long have you been a speech therapist and what does it mean to you?
Okay, I've been a speech therapist for 7 going on 8 years now, and it means a lot to me because I get to empower people through communication.
Which is very important.
Very, yes.
Awesome. And can you please tell us a little bit about some of the interventions that come into play when you're dealing with a child that has been diagnosed with autism?
Okay, so for each child, their intervention will be tailored to them because as you may know, or as you may learn in your series, that autism is a spectrum, which means that each child or each individual on the spectrum has different strengths and challenges. So it's up to us to find out where those strengths and challenges lie and tailor our interventions based on their needs. So we can see a wide variety ranging from children who can verbally communicate but struggle with social aspects of communication, and then other children who make beautiful eye contact and are very social but really struggle with verbal communication.
Great. So you've already touched a bit about the spectrum and the range. So can you tell me, what is the expected outcome, or what is your treatment goals with your interventions?
Yeah, so my main goal for children or individuals on the spectrum is to provide them with a functional means of communication that they can use with a variety of different communication partners in a variety of different contexts or environments. Yeah, just ensuring that they always have a means of communication.
Okay, so it sounds like it's just as important to educate the caregivers and the people that surround the child in their day-to-day lives, just as it's important to educate the child on how to communicate.
No, it really is. There often tends to be stigma around children who can't communicate verbally, but you'll soon come to realize that just because a child can't communicate verbally doesn't mean they don't know what's going on around them, and doesn't mean that they don't want to communicate with those around them.
Right, I see. And we know that children with autism, they have a lot of different needs, right?
Yeah.
So we know that they require a multidisciplinary team. What are some of the other allies and other professions that you interact with frequently?
So often as a speech therapist, I am the first point of contact for parents because the lack of speech or the delayed speech is often the most noticeable aspect for parents and something that they feel needs to be worked on the most. So once they come to me, I then have a whole network of people that I need to refer to ensure the child receives holistic care. So that includes not only a pediatrician, but can include a pediatric neurologist, occupational therapist, and physiotherapist. And each individual will then assess the child's strengths and challenges and can ensure that we are providing holistic care and treatment for the individual.
That's great. So you did mention that speech is often the first thing that parents notice. So what age of a child would you say should normally raise alarm bells or ring alarm bells in a parent's mind to note that, okay, maybe there's something wrong with my child?
Okay, so I like to take it by age. So by 1 year, a child should at least be starting to say their first word. By 2 years old, they should be starting to put 2 words together. So if we just track back a little bit, by 1 year, the child should at least be able to say something like ball. And then by 2 years, they should be putting 2 words together. So starting to say give ball or mama ball. And then by then, definitely by 18 months, if you're not hearing a first word or any word approximations, then I would definitely say it's time to go and speak to your pediatrician.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about accessibility. So as we've said, they're going to require care from different professionals. And how does this normally play into a family's life, right?
Yeah.
Because we have to think about costs of care, about coordinating schedules, adjusting the family to this lifestyle. How accessible are these services, and what toll does it typically take on a family?
We often find that, unfortunately, at the moment, because there are so few occupational therapists and speech therapists available in Botswana, that services aren't accessible as quickly as we'd like them to be for the children. However, I think that's the importance of something like Raising the Ladder, where they hope to put together programs or put together interventions where parents can come together and receive more faster than they typically would just waiting individually to see someone. But it does take quite a toll on the family, because often the child needs to see speech therapy, occupational therapy, sometimes even physiotherapy. So the parents have to figure out the logistics of their timetables, and often parents are working parents, so figuring out how to get their kids to therapy and all those kind of things come into play. So it's not as easy for the families, but I do believe once they get into a routine, it becomes a lot more manageable for them.
That's awesome, and you guys are doing amazing work.
We're really trying.
Keep it up.
Thanks.
And what are some of the top 3 initiatives that you would like to see in Botswana in order to make the lives of children living with autism better?
Awareness, definitely awareness, like reaching people, explaining to them. I mean, I can think of just communication, like we had mentioned, like some kids don't communicate verbally and they may have a picture board or communication device. So definitely awareness, accessibility, being able to reach interventions much sooner, and perhaps more support for the families, because it's not just the child, that the child receives the diagnosis, but it's something that the whole family goes through together, from accessing services to coming to terms with the diagnosis.
And what's one thing that you'd love for parents of children with autism to know?
That they're not alone. That they're definitely not alone, and I think that's another thing that Raising the Ladder aims to achieve, is a place where parents can come together, share their experiences, learn from other parents and professionals as well, but to just definitely know that they're not in this alone.
How long does the speech therapy continue? Is it a lifelong thing? At what age do you say, okay, this child is fine? Age or goal, treatment goal, to say that, okay, they no longer need this?
Yeah, so it really does depend. For some children it can be a lifelong support, and for other children, depending on the families or the child's needs as a whole, once we can implement a communication system with them, then maybe they only need follow-ups every now and again, so that we can reassess the communication system and see how we can adapt it as they grow.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And in general, as a speech therapist, is there something that you'd really advise parents of all children to do, right?
Yeah.
We know we see a lot of things out there that say, okay, it's very important that maybe you make eye contact with your children, you interact with them, you stimulate your child.
Yeah.
What is some of the important things that parents should know when interacting with their children from birth?
Being present. As a parent myself, so there's no shame, I also get caught in a trap where I'm scrolling on my phone and my kid is sitting and he's playing by himself, and I realize, not only as a professional but as a parent, hold up, like I should be spending more time with my kid than just scrolling the socials. So we actively make time to say that this is a golden hour that we get to spend with our child, and he's generally in a good mood at this time, so we make an active, conscious effort to do one-on-one play, and kids learn through play. So definitely try and remember what it's like to be a kid when you're interacting with your own kids. Get on the floor, get on their level, follow their lead and talk to them, connect with them. You need to connect with your child, and they need to trust you for them to communicate with you. And if they always see us on a screen, there's no connection. So you got to connect, and you've got to build that trust with your own child for them to communicate with you.
Iman, before we let you go,
Sure.
one last question. we've been in this beautiful room with a lot of toys, a lot of color, and there's this very large ball that stood out to me. So I'd like to know, what do you do with this?
This we use a lot. It is a saver in speech therapy, especially with our kids on the spectrum. So what we find is children on the spectrum often have a lot of sensory and movement needs. And what this ball does is helps regulate our kids. So think about it as yourself, as Hannah. Right now, if you had an itch right in the middle of your back, it would be really difficult for you to focus on what I'm saying and for you to even form your next question, right? So often we find with kids on the spectrum is that they need to be regulated to communicate. So if they're not regulated, communication is not their main goal. Their main goal is to regulate themselves. So if we see a child is feeling a bit antsy, we'll get them on the ball and we'll bounce them on the ball, or we'll put them on their tummy and roll them. And these are why my OTs, my fellow allied health professionals, are so important. I've learned some tricks and tips from them on how to help regulate our kids. But yeah, that's an example of also how we work with our other allied health professionals.
Awesome. Sounds like you have a lot of fun with your patients.
We try to.
Thank you for that information. And you guys are doing such an amazing job. We really appreciate you. And thank you so much for taking the time to share a little bit with us about the importance of speech therapy.
Thank you so much for having me once again. It was really a pleasure.
We hope you enjoyed this interview. Don't forget to tune into the other videos that are part of this series and educate yourself a little bit more about autism. Happy Autism Awareness Month, and thank you. Take care.